Welcome to today's episode of Creativity from Within podcast. Our guest today is Dr. Keiron Audain from Durban, South Africa. Dr. Audain is a public health and nutrition researcher who works across Africa on the connection between food, farming, and health. He advises governments, universities, and international organizations on how to build food systems that actually improve people's diets and well being. Sit back and enjoy. Thanks for watching. Today, we're going to discuss creative courage, doing the thing even when you're scared. And our guest today is coming from all the way in South Africa, Dr. Keiron Audain. Hi, Keiron. Welcome to the podcast. Dr. Audain, sorry. Welcome to the podcast and
You
thanks
call
for
me.
joining us.
No, it's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me. You can call me Kieran, it's fine.
Okay,
No problem.
Keiron. Okay. And could you tell me a little bit about yourself, your background, what you do, just a little so the audience can feel that connection. What do you do in South Africa? How do you get started? That sort of thing.
Sure thing, sure thing. I'm originally from the Caribbean, Trinidad and Tobago, and I moved to the UK in my early 20s to do my studies. And I've been living and working in Africa in general for the past over 16 years now. So I'm in the academic space by training. I have a PhD in human nutrition, and I've been working in academia for well over 10 years. And recently, I started my own consultancy. So I consult within the public health and the food systems, sustainable agriculture space. So that's essentially what I currently do now.
Amazing. And I think I'm so honored to have you today because today's Earth Day. So happy Earth Day. So I think it's nice that you're here with us today. Tell me a little bit about what you did when in academia and what you do now. Like, what did you teach? And then what did you do now? What do you do now? And how did you decide to make that transition?
So I started off after my PhD, my first academic role was in Zambia. So I moved to Zambia after. So I first moved to South Africa, where I did my PhD. And after that, my first job was at the University of Zambia. So we actually started the very first master's program in human nutrition in the country. And I worked there for about 6 years. So we trained quite a lot of nutritionists who went on to work for various organizations and the government and were placed all across the country. So that's something I'm particularly proud of to be in that process. And after that, I moved to Ghana. I moved to the University of Ghana. I worked there for about a year. And that's when I decided to move back to South Africa and start my consultancy. And I've been working within that space ever since. So that's like about 2023, I believe. Yeah. So I essentially work with different institutions on essentially project evaluations. So once they've completed public health project or even agriculture-based project, we just come in and conduct evaluations, baseline, endline evaluations. That's essentially where I've been for the past about 3 years now.
And exactly what is an agriculture based, what did you say, agriculture based project?
Yeah, so sustainable agriculture. So at the moment, I actually have been doing a bit of work for an organization called AFSA, which is the Alliance for Food Sovereignty in Africa. So they essentially promote agroecology, which is sustainable agricultural practices, which is connected to food sovereignty, meaning that local communities have ownership of their food systems in terms of how it's produced and where it's sold, and also we are primarily how it's produced in terms of sustainable practices. So that would include no synthetic inputs, for example, and no unsustainable practices like your monocrop culture, which is essentially growing the same crop for large stretches of land, which is very, very prominent in your commercial agriculture. So these are some of the things that the organization promotes. So I've been doing quite a bit of work with them over the past 2.5 years, I would believe. Yeah, so essentially that's the space that I'm occupying right now.
That's amazing. It's so interesting. And I always tell people, I actually had this conversation with somebody today, and they were saying, well, I would love to be on your podcast, but it's called Creativity from Within. And what I tell people is creativity. A lot of people hear that word and they think, oh my gosh, I can't draw and I can't paint. But that's not what creativity means. To me, it means solving a problem in what within what you're passionate about, right? So the question I have for you is, were you what gave you the creative courage to leave teaching, which I guess was, when you're teaching, you feel that sense of security, to go out on your own? Were you afraid for somebody watching who is teaching now and they want to go out? Like, how do you get over the fear, and what steps, simple steps, can somebody do to branch out on their own?
Yeah, that's a very, very important question. So I think before you even get to a place where you feel like, okay, this is the only decision, or this is like the last possible option for me, I think whilst you start thinking about it, even before you get to that stage, you can just look for reasons. So find reasons for you to push past that fear, because the fear, it can actually work in your favor to an extent, because the fear of remaining in the same place, the fear of being stagnant, once that grows stronger than the fear of actually making that change, I think that's when your brain starts working and you start thinking, okay, I'm gonna do this. How am I gonna do it? And that kind of creates the reaction for you to start, making those changes and pushing past that original fear. So I think that was it for me in terms of actually deciding like, okay, yeah, I can't stay in this space for much longer. I feel like I can actually have a bigger impact, and it can actually improve my personal life as well as my professional life, if I decide to actually start exploring, other ideas, other options outside of academia. Yeah. So I
Interesting.
think, yeah, it was just that initial spark, that initial frustration that can make you start looking for ideas and reasons to overcome that initial fear.
And I know you said you're based in South Africa, right? Do you ever
Yeah,
think about, because you're originally from Trinidad and Tobago, and you spent time, you said, in London, you
in
lived in London
London.
as well. Do you ever
Yeah.
think about trying to do work with the government, like the Ministry of Agriculture in Trinidad and Tobago, or are you settled where you are in Africa?
So actually last year when I was home on vacation, I actually met some people and we had some discussions about what I do and some of the ideas that they have. And we actually started to have some discussions with the Ministry of Agriculture in Trinidad. So this is actually my first exposure to working back home within my current field. So it's currently in development. So looking forward to seeing how that goes.
That's
Yeah.
really nice. And can you tell us, like, tell somebody, like, there might be somebody watching the interview and, they want to go. I know I asked this before, but I'm going to ask this in a different way. What does taking courageous action steps, why do you think that helps to build momentum when you go from a job? Okay, so you have a job, you want to leave your job with the idea that you have, but you're kind of afraid. So what courageous action steps can somebody take to help build that momentum so that they can go from the job, leave the job, start the business, and get clients?
Well, I think weighing your pros and cons, actually looking at it practical from a practical perspective, as opposed to just, okay, I'm going to jump into this, look at, what are the potential implications, what can potentially go wrong. If you have an option to actually go back to your original position, if things don't necessarily work out, just, look at it from a very practical standpoint, but don't dwell in that space for too long because you actually have to make some action. I think action is what builds confidence. So once you start, reaching out to people, networking, seeing what is available within your field, whatever it is you want to do, start talking to people, hearing their experiences, and then that's when things start happening. You might find yourself in a space where you actually um, make the decision even sooner than you thought. Take that action even sooner because you met certain people and they were able to, either introduce you to someone that's, beneficial, influential, or they even, put you in positions to take advantage of certain opportunities. So yeah, I think that for me was what actually sparked it. So reaching out to people, even if it's a case where you just send someone a message on LinkedIn. When I first moved to Ghana, I started reaching out to people just to say, hey, I'm new in the country, looking to engage with people. And then I met someone who runs a consultancy there, and we've been partnering on projects ever since then. That was like 2022. We've done quite a few projects together. So it's as simple as, just taking action. Action is what builds confidence, I think.
And what is South Africa? The part I don't know anything about South Africa. You had mentioned when I asked you about the weather, you said it's starting to get cool. I never even knew it got cool there. I hate to sound ignorant, but do they have seasons like America does? Like, what is the weather like?
Yeah.
What is life like there?
Yeah, so South Africa, well, I'm in Durban, South Africa in particular, and it's considered like the warmest part of Africa, of South Africa in particular. So the weather is really, really nice. So during winter, it doesn't really get that cold. During summer, it doesn't really get that hot. So I always say, living in Durban, you can wear a vest in the winter and you can wear a jacket in the summer. So it has that type of weather. It gets really cool at night, and during the day, it warms up. So the seasons are opposite because we're in the southern hemisphere. So July, August is winter time here, and December, January is summertime. So summer is coming to an end. We're heading into autumn now, and then by June, July is when the jackets are gonna come out. Some parts of South Africa gets really cold, like Johannesburg. Sometimes it could even snow, but this side it's not that bad.
What do you do for fun outside of work and collaborations? What do you do, to just relax and chill? And, are there spots you like to go to in South Africa? Are there beaches? What's your favorite pastime?
Yeah, yeah, so Durban is it's a coastal city, so the beaches, there's a lot of nice restaurants. It's a nice beachfront where I go to hang out sometimes. I'm also a film buff as well, so in July there's an annual Durban Film Festival, so that's coming up. Looking forward to that. So there's a lot of independent films from all over the world, in particular Brazil. There's a lot of Brazilian films that I watch. So yeah, quite looking forward to that. But yeah, it's a nice city. It's not as fast paced as Johannesburg, but there's still, things to do, nice restaurants as well, lounges. Yeah, it's a cool place to live.
That's nice. And what made you decide living there for somebody looking on? A lot of young people want to move and they're like, oh, what made you, how did you make that decision from leaving London to, no, when you left London, you went to Ghana, you said?
No, no, I came here. So this was my first time in Africa was in Durban. So I came for a 2 week holiday actually in a long time ago, 2008. And I went to visit the university. I was just exploring a potential PhD program that I was thinking about. So I just went to visit and I fell in love with the city. I thought it was beautiful. It reminded me of a nice combination between London and the Caribbean. So I was like, yeah, this feels like the best of both worlds. The only thing is that it's a bit far away from my people's, my friends, family, but I made some family of my own here eventually over
Okay,
the years. So
that's
yeah,
amazing.
so after that holiday, I came back in 2010. And yeah, I just started looking for PhD programs. Eventually found one, and yeah, the rest is history.
That's really, really inspiring. I'm a retired librarian, and about
Okay.
this year would be 6 years, December would be 6 years that I retired, you know. And I remember
Wow.
when I first retired, I decided that because, well, I know you from Trinidad, but I don't know you.
Yeah.
So I decided that I would go to Tobago for a year, and I
Okay.
did. I went to Tobago for an entire year. I never lived in Tobago because it's Trinidad and Tobago. I grew up in Trinidad. I went to
Yeah.
Tobago for an entire year. I knew no one, and I built community by, I'm a professional artist now. So I built community by taking my art to storefronts where I would buy my food and gifting them a painting and saying, you can have this, you can hang it up. And now, and I was thinking about what you said, that it's important to put yourself out there, especially when you're in a new city, but you just have to be careful and you have to do it the right way. And that's
Yeah.
how you build community. You go out and you meet people and you offer services and stuff and you get it done, you know. And I'm very proud of what you're doing. It's very, very impressive, your background, you know. So the other question I have for you, let's say there's somebody leaving university in London because that's where you left, right, to go to South Africa, and they want to do like what you're doing. Would you suggest to them now, because the world is different now, would you suggest to them now that they try to do their PhD in London or that they go to another country to do it?
It all depends on the opportunity and the funding as well. So if you have a funded position, PhD position in London, then by all means, take full advantage of that. So luckily for me, the university where I did my PhD, they have a fee remission program where if you're conducting research, then essentially the university pays your fees, your tuition fees. So as long as the university itself will maintain ownership of whatever research that you conduct. At least that's what it was when I was there. So I took advantage of that and I was able to complete my PhD and all the publications then, as a result, because the university gets government funding for publications. So
Oh,
that
okay.
was
I never knew that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so that was my opportunity. So if you find wherever you find the opportunity, to do a PhD, if that is what you want to do, then you should take full advantage. Wherever it is, you will have an experience that you could then go on and learn from and share with others. So I wouldn't really say, okay, I go here, I go there. I would just
It's
say
just the
wherever the
opportunity.
opportunity arises, because there are people who are looking for, PhD positions all over the world. So wherever they get it, yeah, they can take advantage, make the most of it.
And would you want to share the name of your company or you prefer not to?
So my consultancy company is called Gaia Management Services, but I am about to take on a new position at this company, which is in the background here. AFSI, it stands for AFSI, it stands for African Food Systems Institute. So yeah, I'll be the research development manager for this institute. And essentially, I'll be doing much of the same in terms of research, policy, advisory, and also I personally want to take on the role of working closer with sustainable agriculture entrepreneurs and sourcing funding for different projects that I come across. So I want to engage more with farmers and entrepreneurs who are along that agriculture value chain and source funding, help with their monitoring, evaluation, and learning. And yeah, so I'm using this opportunity to just be a bit more hands-on to actually, see what goes on behind the research itself. Yeah, so that's my new role. Quite
And
excited about it.
you should be. Congratulations. And you talk about research when it comes to agriculture, right? So, are you strict? This is just a sidebar question. Are you strict with your eating? Like, do you only eat like fresh fruit and, or do you indulge now and then in like frozen, like you buy your frozen veggies and then you just heat it up? Like, what is your lifestyle like when it comes to food? Because of all the research you do and stuff.
Yeah, so it's funny because I used to be a strict vegan. So I was a vegan for like maybe 9 years. So during my time in London and like the first few years of being in South Africa, I was a vegan, and then I slowly started introducing like animal products, so eggs and cheese and milk. Then I became pescatarian, and now I eat chicken. So I kind of progressed over let's say, the past 20 years. And I used to be a lot more into the diet side of things in terms of what people eat. But then the more I got involved in agriculture, the more I realized that, you know what, a lot of the food that we consume, depending on how it's been produced, it actually lacks a lot of nutrient quality, especially now because the soil quality in many areas is not what it used to be. So the food that we consume, the nutrient quality is questionably lower than in previous years. So I started to focus more energy on, sustainable agricultural practices, nourishing the soil. And yeah, so I've been a lot less strict with my diet. Because another thing I realized when I was vegan, I ate a lot of processed foods because there's certain foods that I would eat like these like meat substitutes, for example, which is like highly processed. And I think now I try to focus more on just getting fruits and vegetables. So having a more balanced diet because there is a lot of nutrients, well, not a lot, but there are key nutrients that you can get from animal products, like your vitamin 12, which is very important, for nerve and brain function. So yeah, I think one realization I came about is if you have a lot of um the chronic disease in your family. So if you have a family history of like cancers, heart disease, diabetes, then eating a primarily plant-based diet is very beneficial. But also if you have a history of mental illness in your family, like Alzheimer's, I mean dementia in general, or even any other like mental disorders, then you may want to consume some animal products,
Good to know.
specifically for the B vitamins. Yeah.
Amazing. I'm getting the wrap up to stop, but this was a really, really, really very interesting conversation. And I learned a lot, especially the eating part, because people think I'm childish when it comes to the way I eat. I eat whatever I want, whenever I want, not in a bad way, but I believe that everything in moderation is my motto for life in general, But having said that, thank you so much for your time and your insight and all the nice gems that you dropped. And I hope that people can learn and be inspired from what you shared with us today. And I wish you nothing but the best in your new venture. And thank you, thank you, thank you for everything that you do to help us live healthy lives. Thanks for
No,
attending.
no, I really appreciate it. Thank you for having me and the opportunity to share and reflect on my journey as well. So yeah, it's greatly appreciated. Wish you all the best as well, and to all the listeners as well. Wishing you guys all the best. Thank
Have
you
a good
so much.
one.
You too. Take care.
Thanks so much for joining us today. Hope you enjoyed the conversation. See you next time. Have a good one.